the compassionate, the merciful, the World Muslim Communities Council resumes its webinars and its series of lectures, which it conducts for a number of Islamic activities and events for Muslim communities. And now the host of the World Muslim Communities Council is Dr. Wadad Al-Naib. Dr. Wadad Al-Naibi is an assistant professor of Arabic literature and the language. She is a media specialist, a thinker, and a scholar and an expert in the African women's affairs. She has had a long-standing history in the field of Islamic Da'wah and the call for Islam. She graduated from the Faculty of Da'wah in the year 2015, and now she is preparing for obtaining her PhD degree in Africa Global University. The doctor is well known in Benin, in the Republic of Benin, which is a country located to the west of Africa. She is working diligently to spread the Islamic Da'wah. She's well known for her moderation and wisdom, and she adopts in this regard the approach adopted by the forefathers and the pious individuals in Western Africa. And Western Africa has always been known to be a region for moderation and communication with others. Doctor, we start today, and we are happy to invite you to this conference.
Vous êtes la première à être parmi nous ce mardi. Inch'Allah, donc vous aurez tout le temps nécessaire.
God willing, this will be a message to everyone, and we will be able to address the question of Islam and Da'wah and how to communicate with others and how to communicate in a responsible manner in different regional contexts in Africa and in Western Africa. Now I would like to listen to you. First, we have translation into French and into English as well. Welcome, you're most welcome, please. The floor is yours. And the merciful and peace be upon Prophet Muhammad and all his kin and companions. My greetings to the World Muslim Communities Council and to all the organizers of the council and all the staff of the World Muslim Communities Council. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you here today to share with you my experience. Because talking about Islam in Benin is a large topic, actually. It's a topic that has a great deal of personal experience. Speaking on my own behalf as a Benini Muslim, the way I perceive of Islam and the way of which I heard how Islam reached Benin makes me, at the end of the day, I have a very special point of view through thinking about it and looking into all the available information. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to be with you today and to have the honor of speaking with you online. Thank you very much, and God bless all of you. Islam in the Republic of Benin, between lost coexistence and desired peaceful coexistence. You may wonder why I've selected this topic as a speaker today. Islam in the Republic of Benin may be close to Islam in Nigeria and Islam in Burkina Faso and Togo and Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, all of which lie to the west of Africa, and there's a great deal of communication among the tribes. There are migrations, and there are political and economic factors that are quite common. So there's a great deal of resemblance. But we are not talking about Islam as a religion only, and not the way we used to talk about Islam. I want to talk about the values and principles and the strength that was represented in values and proper understanding of Islam, and how things have evolved, or how we have reached down to what we have today. And do we have in our history anything that we can refer to to refer to the true values of Islam or the reality of Islam in the public opinion. Thank you very much once again for giving me this opportunity. Islam, the way Islam first appeared in Benin, there are different opinions and conflicting opinions actually, and intermingling ones about how Islam started in Benin or began to exist in Benin. There are a number of studies which say that Islam reached Benin in the 11th century AD. Some studies are talking about the 14th century AD, and some studies say it started on in the 15th century, and some other studies say it was initiated at the 18th century. Actually, Benin comes in a longitudinal manner. It is to the west, it is a little bit thin in terms of the total area. To the east, we have Nigeria bordering Benin, and to the north, Burkina Faso, and to the west, Niger, and it overlooks the Atlantic Ocean. As you know, the UAE is in the crossroads among different nations and countries. The same way the same concept can be applied to Benin. There are a large number of migrants who go through Benin for one reason or another. This means that all the kingdoms that used to exist in Western Africa or in West Africa participated in this, and the tribes that we have in Benin now, whether they were Aboriginal tribes or whether they are new ones, they have brought with them all the culture and the religions and the values. And this is the reason why we have those diverse and even conflicting opinions on the start of Islam in Benin. However, we can stress for sure that Islam reached to the north of Benin in the 14th century and reached the south in the 17th century. To the south, it was spread by Muslim traders and interaction with Nigeria. You know that the Islamic kingdoms that used to exist to the north in Benin, and to the north of Benin, we have Jogo and Bago and Natengo. They were also very close by to Sondan Kingdom, which was in Mali. So the migrants traveled from those areas, and there was marriages, common marriages back then, and this resulted in the intermingling of the tribes back then. Getting back to the history of Islam, Benin was known as the Kingdom of Dahomey, and at that kingdom, the foremost tribe, or the ruling tribe, was the Fonlong tribe. And the Fonlong tribe were idolaters. They are the so-called Vodou religion, which is well known in Benin. They are other idolatory religions. We have many idolatory religions. Up till now, it still exists as a religion. Benin today, Benin and Dahomey in the past, they represent the Oyo Kingdom. Oyo Kingdom in Nigeria, which was the Yoruba tribe. It descended and it took or traveled from the middle of Benin to the north, and to the south we had the Dahomey Kingdom. So there was a conflict between Dahomey Kingdom and Oyo Kingdom, and there were some divisions. And after the colonialization of Benin, I would like to liken Benin to a tree. It's more like a tree. That is why we have the Yoruba tribes and Nago, and we have the Fon tribes, which used to live to the south of Benin. And the most famous cities in the Dahomey Kingdom were Abomey and Wedam. So if we notice all of these different kingdoms that used to exist, and which were competing kingdoms that wanted to prove themselves and to defend their borders and their territories, all of this affected the spread of Islam. Islam in Dahomey, it was considered as a new religion, or one of the religions that used to exist. Or in other terms, it's as if it's another statue or another type of idolatry. It was not perceived as the way it is in terms of monotheism and the genuine rituals of Islam. So at the beginning of the day, there wasn't much of a conflict or rejection. Of course, there were some reservations about the spread of Islam, but this, at the very beginning, we need to pay attention to this point, that Islam and the spread of Islam was based on the convictions of some individuals, and the Muslim individuals who provided a role model and embodied ethical values. There was no da'wah in the sense that keenness on ensuring that others convert to Islam. There was only the interaction between Muslims and non-Muslims. Of course, I cannot say that there was not any sort of da'wah, but actually the interaction with the Aboriginal and indigenous population was the way that enabled them to love Islam and to convert to Islam. Benin is composed of more than 62 tribes. This means that we are talking about 62 languages in Benin. We are talking about tribes that even within themselves, they are very close to one another or even quite distant. There is a massive difference between the Fon tribe and Yoruba tribe. There is a massive gap between the Dindi and Bariba tribes and the Algon tribe and so on. There are massive differences among them. However, these massive differences can appear through the features, because in general, a pious individual or a positive individual shows certain signs, and the individual who is not conducting evolution or who is not in that way, you will not perceive of him the same clear manner. It is true that the clothes you wear do not determine your religion. However, the external image in some cases show you the person's individual convictions and even his own religion in some cases. So these kingdoms, the credit for spreading Islam or the kingdom goes to the kingdom of Sangay, and Islam to the north and Islam to the south. Each one of them has its own flavor. Islam to the east, Islam to the west of Benin, the eastern and the western side and the eastern side. Every region has its own color and its own flavor. Yet the Islamic values and the Islamic ties and Islamic Sharia is quite clear in all of those areas. Talking about Islam in Benin, it's as if talking about Islam in a number of countries, but they are not a number of countries, they are a number of ethnicities that adopt Islam under the flag and under the umbrella of a single country. This is the situation in Benin. The percentage of Muslims in Benin is 27% of the population, 27.7. It is the highest rate of any religion. You know that there's a lot of manipulation in terms of the statistics that we have. And the entity responsible for statistics in Benin is an official entity, and the political orientation of some individuals, or the state, or others, make in some cases that it is not in their best interest to show a certain thing, or to show that there is a certain percentage of people that goes above a certain point, especially when talking about Islam in a secular country, in a country that witnesses a great deal of campaigns for spreading Christianity, and it also is a country that had an idolatory background. So we need to conduct research, and we need to realize that one of the major roles that can be focusing on by entities focusing on the Arabic language and the Islamic religion is to conduct a full survey and have a full census of the total number of Muslims in Benin. So even at the end of the day, we as Muslims, or in our societies and Islamic societies and Islamic entities, at least we will be able to know for sure that, and we can say confidently that based on the survey or the census conducted by this entity, we can say that the total number of Muslims in Benin is growing. And this is a fact, but we cannot prove it in a scientific manner, unfortunately. So after Islam, the second religion is Christianity, Protestant, evangelicals, and so on, Christians and Catholics and so on. We have the other religions. In some cities, such as Jubu city, which is a Muslim city, the number of Muslims there is more than 80% of the total population of that city. But the city and Quito and Sakiti city, which has a number of famous Muslim schools and Islamic schools and so on. So these percentages in some areas maybe 50% or more. It may reach all the way up to 90% of the population, or in some areas 10% and so on. But we do need this kind of census. However, what matters the most is that there is a congregation of Muslims to the north and another one to the southeast region of Benin. I talked previously about a characteristic or a certain flavor of the type of Islam that's spread in certain areas, such as Tarako and Niki and Chacho and Safi and Dakha, from the middle of Benin all the way to the north, and even in Boricua. These are names of famous and major cities in Benin. We see that Islam in those areas is very close to, in terms of the habits and traditions, it is very close to the Malayan people and to the people of Niger, because there is a great deal of interaction with people of the north, with the residents of those areas. So there are common grounds. Definitely they are Islamic values, but they are projected in a different flavor. Islam in the city of Porto Novo, Fakiti and Ifein and Keto and Bobe, because we are close to Nigeria, so we see that the way they conduct their funerals, or the way they celebrate the birth of new children, and the celebration of marriages and weddings are very close to the way we have it, the way they have it in the north. So is it a good thing or a bad thing? There are many trends and many orientations and many sects. Maybe they criticize or support those developments, yet this is a fact that we live, and it is a blessing of Almighty Allah, because we have been created into nations and tribes, and we have diversity in every tribe and every nation, even in every single individual, and even within the same tribe or within the same family. You may see someone who is fully committed, or someone who is a little bit of an extremist, and so on. But at the end of the day, they bear witness and testify that there is no deity but Almighty Allah, and Prophet Muhammad is the Prophet of Almighty Allah. So the story of the first mosque in Porto Novo, there was the King Soroji in the 18th century. So, of course, in the management of kingdoms, whether in Africa in general, I'm talking about something that I know for sure. I don't want to make any generalizations, but if we have a Muslim king, he would lead the Muslims in prayer in congregation on Friday sermon. When there is a supplication or there is an event, either they start by conducting the supplication, or they conclude the supplication. Nobody precedes them. Nobody precedes the king. There are procedures and there are customs for how the royals would conduct the prayers if they are Muslim. However, if the king is Christian, he is keen on ensuring stability and ensuring that all those who live under his rule or under his reign are living in peace. So in that case, we have seen in Boknovo, in the time of the kingdoms, the king had a sheikh who would consult the sheikh. We call him alim or sheikh or imam, who may be called alpha. So he had a sheikh who would conduct reciting some verses of the Holy Quran to protect the king, despite the fact that the king does not embrace Islam or does not believe in Islam. So he would have this priest who is presenting to conduct Christian events and Christian celebrations, yet under that leadership there would be an imam who leads Muslims in congregation and so on. So we had the King Suji, or the area of Ozomi in Porto Novo. A special location was dedicated to that imam, who was under the reign of that non-Muslim king. He dedicated a site for him to build a mosque, and that mosque was very close to the king's palace. But that site used to be dedicated to the idolaters, and there were statues over there. So, or there were idols over there. So those people used to coexist with one another and live with one another in peace. And this is part of the sound nature of human people, or humans, wherever they are. And the thing is that we have begun to overlook our history, and we started forgetting our own history. And even many educated individuals who have studied Islamic studies and many imams do not know that history. They are unaware of that history and how there was this type of tolerance at the beginning, so we know where we're heading. So they dedicated that site to building the mosque, and that mosque, it was the first mosque. It was built using wooden logs, and they would conduct the Eid prayer and Friday sermon in that mosque, and there was a very small number of Muslims back then, yet everybody would attend, and that alpha or that imam used to oversee the well-being of Muslims and to defend against evil spirits and so on. That imam was called Alpha Sido, or Sheikh Sido, or Imam Sido. He, despite that, the fact that the non-Muslims did not share the same beliefs with him, they did not stop him from conducting Islamic rituals. And in the same manner, this is the story of the first mosque in Porto Novo. Now Porto Novo is well known and quite famous, and it has many mosques. I don't want to say thousands of mosques or hundreds of mosques in a certain suburb, which is less than 1 kilometer wide. You would find more than one mosque. If this shows anything, it shows a great deal of acceptance of Islam, and even the laws and regulations have a number of ease and leniency in terms of dealing with these aspects, and even they even overlook certain things, even when it should be more strict, just to avoid a number of problems and so on, and to take into account the fact that there is another party which lives and other religions, so things have to be held in a more serious manner, and it should not be conducted in a spontaneous manner like that. This may cause some problems even among Muslims themselves. But if you visit Benin and if you visit Porto Novo, you will notice this in a very clear manner. Just not just in Porto Novo, even in Togo and in Baku and Wida and in Abomia, and in all those cities, you will see a large number of mosques, an increasing number of mosques. There is even a mosque in Sakiti city, where you cross the street, you cross the main street, to the right side there is a mosque, and to the left side there is another mosque, and they are facing one another. I have divided my intervention into 10 sections. The first point I already covered it, how Islam rose or started in Benin. The story of the first mosque in Porto Novo city. The third point now is the innocence of children in Sakiti, and boosting and supporting tolerance and peaceful coexistence. I lived in the UAE for a long period of time. I lived in Benin when I was 16 years old. I came when I was 16 years old to discover my country and to adapt to my local culture and to learn everything from scratch. However, even this acceptance and even this openness was based on this background or this education that I received in the United Arab Emirates, and we learned how to love our homeland, and even especially what we studied in the social sciences and social studies subjects. What I noticed from Sakiti city, that when children play with one another, they do not distinguish between who is Muslim and who is Christian or who is idolatory. They just play together as children, regardless of religion. They share food with one another. When it's time for lunch, the nearest house, on the way of the children who is playing with his friend, they just go to that house and eat in that house. Houses were open, and this was a great advantage. Unfortunately, we have lost this advantage. Children used to play together. they did not have any differences among them. Even if the father of one child is rich and the other child's father was poor, they would just play innocently. And it was time for the Quranic school. Children would go together. So I would go to attend the Quranic school, and even illiterates and Christian children would go with them to the Quranic school, or the school where they learn Quran. So the outstanding thing here that the alpha or the sheikh in that session, it was not part of his responsibilities to say, no, you are a Christian, or no, you are illiterate. No, he would teach everybody the Holy Quran. I met people who are old, the age of my grandmother and grandfather. Unfortunately, this phenomenon has disappeared. Even it may exist in some villages. Even you see that they have memorized the opening chapter or Fatiha, and they have memorized certain sections of the Holy Quran. Some of them embraced Islam quite easily, and some of them who remain Christian. Yet they do not perceive of the religion as a religion that is antagonizing or standing against or confronting Islam or against Islam. They believe that they have their own religion, but this does not mean that I have to be in conflict with Islam or Muslims, because they were raised together. So the innocence of those children, and I believe that it is true innocence, but it is also part of the wisdom of Almighty Allah in that series of Zakiti, the children do not distinguish between themselves in that regard, but it is an element that boosted peaceful coexistence, because those who grew up together, at the end of the day, it is impossible for them to get into conflict with one another, and they cannot hate one another, even if there are some people who would like to instill those ideas into them. Of course, there are those who adopted extremism or started to hate others or to call them names, but in the generation of my grandfathers and grandmothers, who were born in the 1920s and 1930s, they were far more open to one another. I would say it's as if they understood life and understood nature and the nature of the universe, and understood the nature of the human nature and instinct far better than we did. So they boosted peaceful coexistence in a spontaneous manner. They just did it in a spontaneous manner and in a very easy manner. Even those teachers who used to follow up on them, they adapted to the innocence of those children and did not discriminate among those children based on their religions. So Muslims were raised to love those around them, even if they do not adopt the same religion. Of course, they may not adopt the same religion. I'm a Muslim, and I believe in Islam and the values of Islam, and I believe that the only true religion in front of Allah is Islam. But this does not mean that I have to impose this on others or to reject them, because only Almighty Allah can guide people. I cannot guide the ones I love, as stated in the Holy Quran. I'm aware of the limited time we have. Social relations and peaceful coexistence. I always talk about Sekiti city because I belong to Sekiti there. When I went back there, I studied and I tried to understand. Yet it is widespread in all cities in Benin and in most countries in West Africa. So we had social relationships among individuals. Those social relationships, maybe you would have a plot of land or a piece of land in Africa and in West Africa in general. Families rely heavily on agriculture, and land is almost a holy asset. Individuals, even when men get married or marry more than one woman, one of the key objectives men had in mind was to have women who would assist him in agriculture and to have many children who would assist him in cultivating the land and so on. However, within that context, which the main concept which had to do with the social and economic life in this regard, and I'm talking the main resource here, land, at the end of the day, and despite all of that, and despite the importance of land, individuals were very important. And Benini Muslims would give part of their land to an individual who wants to settle down nearby him. They did not look at their religions or what religion they embrace, but they would perceive of them and think of the other people's spirit and individual values and ethics. Of course, they may it is true that one may be more inclined to deal with the Muslims like him and to cooperate with him in business, and the workers who work in Islam may be predominantly Muslims, yet the main concept was a lot more open-minded. So they would cultivate the land and they would deal with land in a very funny manner. They would take a stone and throw that stone and say from here to that stone, this area is yours. Or to look at the horizon and say, look at this tree over there. Your land will reach that tree. They did not have any written documents or title deeds. All they had was respecting the war, they said. And it was not part of the rights of any child or any of the sons of that man to criticize or to ask or to claim an inheritance that his father gave as a gift to another individual. So what I want to highlight in this regard is that those individuals who would come and take that piece of land did not have necessarily to be Muslims or Christians or so. What matters is that he dealt with them and he dealt with that individual. He may be a migrant who came from another country and so on, and who was close to that individual or to the king of the city or to the rich individuals in the city, and he submitted a request and his request was not rejected. So this kind of warm social relations, and this is part of peaceful coexistence. And we see Muslims who used to participate in this regard. Now, we should realize that the Islamic coexistence values are deeply rooted ones, and they still exist, but they have changed in time. Yet, at the end of the day, we hope through education and through raising awareness and through guidance, we hope to restore those values, because this is the way Islam should be. This is the way Prophet Muhammad taught us, and this is the true understanding of Islam. After giving an individual that piece of land, there would be companionship. Somebody has a friend, regardless of his religion. He has been interacting with him and cooperating with him in business or in trade or in agriculture, or someone who did him a favor, or somebody who worked for him as a worker and so on, or hired him for a certain job. So whatever the way one individual meets another. The good way in which a Muslim treats another individual who does not embrace Islam, in many cases you would see that Christian or illiterate individual provide introduce his son or one of his sons to stay with that individual. So they grant his son as, let's say, a gift to that individual to remain with him, even despite the fact that this individual is a Muslim and not belonging to the other individual's religion. So if there hadn't been this type of coexistence, no matter what the situation is, no one would send his son to be raised in the house of a Muslim man unless he was confident that this Muslim man is a generous man and a man who has ethical values. If Muslims had not been perceived in such a way, they would not have reached that level, and there would not have been this kind of brotherly relations with them. So this is another characteristic that the generation of our grandfathers had. We hope to have that characteristic, and we hope our grandchildren would adopt the same stances. Adopting children. There are many families through this companionship and sending this son or those children to be raised in the house of that sheikh or that individual, that child becomes part of the family. And even children accept him, and they do not discriminate against them. They do not say that this is a different individual who would be raised as part of the family and get married and stays at home. And nobody knows except when somebody starts telling the names and the titles and the grand names and say no, this is this individual joined the family and he does not have the family name. All of this is an example of peaceful coexistence and one of the characteristics that we have. Of course, there are Sharia regulations in this regard, but definitely the concept itself or the purpose of this, the purpose of those Sharia constraints are the boosting those elements in the framework of the Sharia. Moving on to friendship, children used to go to school together. They would not distinguish between, they would deal with their friends through the experience that they have with them, and through that we would have a friendship emerging between them. It is true in some cases, when all children would go to a Quranic school or to a religious school, as part of their friendship, they would make them more Muslims than Christians. But going to a French school or to a government school, there's an interaction among all religions, and everybody has his own values, and the friendship among children emerge in that context. And I believe that recently, with all the Christianization campaigns and the campaigns for spreading Christianity, we have begun to perceive a sort of discrimination against Muslims. And this is a Muslim, you should not get close to this Muslim, and so on. But at the end of the day, people should perceive one another, an individual should perceive one another from an ethical perspective and not a religious one. The fifth point, the way of upbringing children and the way they participate in underscoring the values of coexistence. In Yorubawi proverb, we talk about the Umarubai. The Umarubai means the sound individual or this individual. So when we talk when we talk about individuals or human beings, we mean this role model of an ethical individual, whether he's a Muslim or non-Muslim. So when talking about upbringing individuals and disciplining individuals and adopting ethical values and instilling values in general, this Muslim individual, in addition to his Islamic values or humanitarian values, because values are values that have been stressed by Islam, and even through the spread of Islam, every single ethical value was adopted by Islam, and all the evil concepts were abrogated and rejected by Islam. But these values exist because they are instinct values, and everybody has them. They are humanitarian values. So these values in current times, either they have been lost and we need to regain them, either they have been disregarded and we need to restore them, and maybe they do not exist in the modern context or in some context, but we need to restore them. I believe that these instinctive values do exist in all humans, and we need to restore them. The forefathers did a great job, and our fathers and mothers, I'm not talking about parents only, I'm talking about both of them, not just fathers or mothers. I'm talking about parents in general. The most important element they focused on is ethical upbringing and instilling values and instilling into their children social values and how to become beneficial to other individuals and to your community, and how to respect your word and be committed to the promises you make, and all of that. This was something that was taught to children and was implemented in front of them. Children would be disciplined and blamed if they undermine any of those values. Families paid special attention to their reputation and to their name. That is why in the proverb they said, you look at the families and the family values before you give a child a name. So these values are the ones that pave the way for tolerance and peaceful coexistence, that every individual respects himself and respects others and become a highly ethical and well-disciplined individual. That's why we have peaceful coexistence, because people without values cannot coexist with one another. People without values cannot be sound Muslims. People without values will be enemies to themselves before becoming enemies to anyone else. So they paid special attention to upbringing and being well brought, but the things have changed and values have changed, and those who upbring people have changed. That's why people changed. I'm talking here about changes starting from the 19th century, the 20th century, and the 21st century. Those values began to change. People want their children to obtain a good university degree also, but they don't care much if they say that their sons have committed a crime or violated ethical rules and so on. So those ethical values have changed. Priorities have changed. But thank God, praise be to Almighty Allah, thank God, we have more awareness now. There is an awakening now and a more comprehensive perspective, even if it is not at the level that we aspire to, and not strong enough to overcome the negative trend, yet it is present and it has its influence. And God willing, it will have its positive impact on a large scale, God willing. So underscoring the values of peaceful coexistence is an intuitive element. You coexist and tolerate with your neighbors, with the people you deal with in the market, you deal with the driver, with the servant who comes to your house, and with the maid that comes to your house, and with all workers, and so on. You have one of the most important aspects of peaceful coexistence in Benin, or Benini peaceful coexistence from the Islamic perspective, is that when you pass by a certain group of people or any group of people, it is a mandatory duty to say peace. Or one of the part European values is to bow in as a gesture of respect to those people, whether they are senior individuals or not, because we have a proverb that says the elderly bow a little to the younger individuals, so that younger individuals would bow completely to the elderly. So there's exchange of respect, and this is a gesture of respect. In African languages, pay special attention to proverbs. Whenever you talk, you use proverbs, and children are raised in that context. These proverbs revive the concepts of peaceful coexistence and tolerance and mutual respect. So when you are speaking and when your language is based on tolerance and peaceful coexistence, when the mentality is fully aligned with these values of respect, I believe that this is an element that underscores and supports those values. I may quickly say that today we need to have what we say and what we teach, even in the subject of mathematics. There has to be clear objectives by providing exercises and models to underscore the values of tolerance and peaceful coexistence. And this cannot be achieved unless we have dedicated entities that have real potential and capabilities to pave the way for these models of peaceful coexistence. We, as an entity, we need to underscore those values. Number 6, the misunderstanding and misinterpretation of Islam and the spirit of Islam. Islam is the religion of peace. By nature, it is the religion of peace. Islam represents humanitarian values in its natural and instinctive manner. There are no distinctions in Islam between internal peace and external peace that we have with everyone. Islam, when I talk about Islam as part of interfaith dialogue, I would say this quite proudly, that sharing the concept of peace be with you, even with those who are not Muslims, this is a call for many great values. When a Muslim comes by and says, peace be with you, and I say, peace be with you, I feel a great deal of warmth and kindness and compassion. But when a Christian comes by and he knows I'm a Muslim and says, Anata, when they see a woman who is wearing a veil, they will say, Hajja, even if she's not a Hajja, just for wearing the veil or hijab, they call her Hajja. Hajja is a veiled woman, disciplined woman, and so on. So they say, Hajja, peace be with you. When I look to that Christian individual who is using the best possible way of greetings, and he is conducting this with me, and he is greeting me in this sublime and excellent manner. So, but sometimes we see other individuals who have a different perspective and interpretation of Islam. They say, when a Muslim sitting and a Christian comes by and he says, peace be with you, you should just say peace, because that's what you should not really exchange greetings with Christians and so on. So there's this misinterpretation of Islam. And even if they say they send greetings to us in our religious sermons, we are better than them. We should not say greet them. So, and all the verses that have to do with this in the Quran highlight those deviated Christians who are not well guided and so on. Muslims, if they do so on. So they can also be deviated. So there are misrepresentation and misunderstanding of Islam. And if a Muslim, there is, according to this misinterpretation of Islam, they say that whatever Muslims do in terms of sins, they just seek forgiveness and that's it. But all the other evil actions that may do, they just disregard that. So we see some of those Muslims who just distance themselves from reality completely. So they have misunderstanding of the Holy Quran and misunderstanding of the Islamic Sharia, and they misunderstand and misinterpret the spirit of the Sharia. And this undermines peaceful coexistence. And this causes a way of spreading misconception about Islam, because those non-Muslims, when they see these types of behaviors and listen to such things which are said in public and said even in the media and said in some celebrations, whether we are talking about funerals or weddings or celebrating a new baby, they always attend, non-Muslims always attend those celebrations. They say it. So some individuals say those things, and those things will foment hatred. Those things and those wrong concepts will only create some sort of bragging, and some people will start perceiving of themselves as angels or something. And this feeling of being full of yourself, and so if you are a Muslim, you are above and beyond all individuals. This is definitely a misconception and a misunderstanding of Islam. I know that education has had an impact on that, and education in many universities and in many countries, because when you study the different ideologies and the prevalent ideologies, when you learn in a certain country that they learn that this is the understanding of Islam. Is it an open-minded Islam? Is it a moderate understanding or interpretation of Islam, or is it an extremist one? So when those individuals study and go back to their home countries, they convey those concepts and those understandings of Islam, and they do not understand the reality of their countries, and that they should be moving in a gradual manner, and what are the things that should be said, and what are the things that should be perceived in a different manner. They misunderstand and misinterpret all of those concepts, and this causes many problems. I enlist all of these problems under the title of misunderstanding the spirit of Islam, because Islam is not a set of values and rules only, or a set of rituals only. Islam is, and the implementation of Islam is the spirit of the values of Islam. It is a fragrance of religion. It is a light that lights the way and that everybody sees, and it is a great value. And if Muslims adopt and implement and manifest these values, it will be more like a wonderful fragrance that emanates from them. But if those Muslims have hatred within their hearts against Muslims or non-Muslims, I believe this will undermine all of those great fragrances of ethical and Islamic values. So I believe the strongest testament to this is when a child is held, a child who was born today, or he's only 1 month old or 1 year old, when we have an individual who has a black heart, in the simple language, even that child feels that the individual who is holding him is an evil individual. Even animals and dogs can sense that this is an evil individual. A Muslim individual is a passionate individual, a compassionate one. Even children, and a good soul in him, an angels sense it in him, and because he understands Islam properly. Samples and examples of how we can preserve peaceful coexistence in the face of hatred. I've spoken with the World Muslim Communities Council about, because I've been writing an article about an individual known as Baba Legon. Baba Legon is a Christian individual who used to live in Botonova city. He offered his land to Muslims to dedicate it for conducting the Eid prayer. So we see that this is an area of land owned by Christians, dedicated to Muslims, who dedicated them to Muslims. So the Muslims in Botonovo asked them to let them buy the land from him, and he rejected to sell that land to those Islamic entities, and he offered it to Muslims free of charge. So this is despite everything, there are individuals who are compassionate about Islam, who love Islam. There are those who love Islam, even if there are some Muslims who make people hate Islam. That same individual in the nearby mosque, in his suburb, so in the lower the lower story of his house, there is a grand hall in his house, and people conduct Taraweeh prayer or night prayer during the whole month of Ramadan in his house. So that person passed away a few days ago, and we continue to remember that Christian individual. Whenever he came to visit us at home, my house used to say that when he comes at our house, he would say, peace be upon Prophet Muhammad. So imagine that he is a Christian coming into the house of a Muslim family, and he's calling upon them to say peace be upon Prophet Muhammad. So this is an example of the friends of Muslims and those individuals who respect one another and who respect the community, and they are standing against the other trends, the other vicious trends, whether have to do with extremist Muslims or Christianization campaigns and other things, and those values that they continue to uphold. Unfortunately, some individuals obliterated those values, and today, through this establishment that we have established, which is Ibn Battuta Islamic Institute, we continue to promote peaceful coexistence and the values of citizenship, and we stress that we must have a proper understanding of Islam, and that Muslims should have an open-minded mentality and adopt moderation in the embracing of Islam, because we are a moderate nation. The chairman of Islamic Studies Center and the heads of the department always promote this concept, and in our meetings with our professors, we continue to underscore this message of our institute. We should be beneficial to ourselves and to others. We must continue, and this great values and great deeds should continue even after we pass away, because we have a limited time in this life, and no matter how long our life is, it will end one day. So the role models and the great examples and good deeds are the ones that will remain after we pass away. So I have a question. I don't know how we can answer that question, but what is the image that we have left about Islam? What is the impression that we have left about Islam before we leave this world? The role of Ibn Battuta African Institute is a very important one. Ibn Battuta Institute is a private university institute. It's a national institute. It's a Benini institute, and the administrative staff is from Benini individuals. It is considered a national initiative, the first of its kind. There have been a number of initiatives between Libya and Benin in this regard, but this is an acknowledged entity, and this is the first time in Benin to have Islamic studies as acknowledged as part of a private university, and it's the first time that the Arabic language is approved of and approved as a teaching language and studying language, and having an entity that supports this. And we have many private education establishments, but the ability to prove this to others and to prove that your background or your interpretation of us as Muslim is wrong, and this is the proper concept, and this is the true concept. This is the true values of Islam. We do not claim that we have all the mechanisms through which we can rectify all the considerations, but we try to participate and exert an effort in this process. We define the Arabic language through this institute, and we define Benin and introduce Benin and the values it has, because our intervention for the day has to do with defining the state of Benin, or the Republic of Benin, and myself as a Benini citizen. Through this institute, we are conducting a great role, and we are playing a major role to spread the culture of peace. And this is highly important, to promote the culture of peace, because peaceful coexistence cannot be achieved without peace. And this peace means that we need to combat poverty, we need to combat illiteracy, we need to combat diseases and so on. We do our best, even with the limited capabilities that we have. We try to let students and teachers and professors understand that we need to protect ourselves and our health, even using simple things. We need to protect our standard of living to ensure that this educational process is supported by technological aspects to meet labor market needs, because Islam, to be free Islam and to ensure that Muslims have full peaceful coexistence, we must say has a major impact on the image of Islam. When we walk in some areas or some cities, we see that there are Muslim beggars begging for money. This reduces and undermines the image of Islam. So when students realize that they pay for the tuition fees, or they pay their tuition fees, even if somebody has helped me, or there's an individual who made donations to assist me with my tuition fees, this means that my education is valuable. So I do my very best, and I study, and I exert an effort to be a real human being, a well-educated human being, to project a good image of Islam. So since I am a student in Ibn Battuta Institute, and since I'm a Muslim, and since I'm a Benini citizen, I must do this and that to uphold those values, and I must refrain from doing this and that to protect the image of Islam. This awareness of the value of the individual cannot be achieved without education. We believe that education in this manner is the element that will boost peaceful coexistence and tolerance and living together in peace. The models or samples of the aspired tolerance, are we talking about a value or a culture? You may learn a value, but from one day to another, for example, in the ethical values lesson, we teach ethics and good conduct in the Ibn Battuta Institute. I may say to someone, you should do this and that. So this is a value that people study, and we instill this value into those students. We may succeed and we may be unsuccessful. Yet the culture is the cornerstone of implementing this value. So when we talk about the peaceful coexistence in the Institute, the culture of peaceful coexistence is far more important, because when we have a cultural individual, he will act in a spontaneous manner, in an instinctive manner. When we have a well-cultured individual, he knows how to speak, how to sit, how to move, how to be committed to the time he has, how to be accurate, and how not to waste his time, how to not to negate his image and undermine it by doing trivial things. So the Islamic culture is quite far-reaching, and teaching Islamic culture is quite important. And we should not sever this highly important segment that is associated with Islam and Islamic studies, which is a culture. The culture itself, because Islam is a culture, Islam is a civilization. Unfortunately, we see many Muslims who do not have a good culture and who are not civilized, and this is the element that undermines the image of Islam. This is the worst enemy of Islam in Benin, and I believe this enemy is a joint enemy to all of us. Finally, and I think I'm running out of time, recommendations for upbringing people to embrace peaceful coexistence. Education comes first and foremost. Having educators as role models. If you lose a value, you cannot teach it to others. If you miss a value, you cannot impart it on others. Unfortunately, one of the problems that we face, if the teaching staff do not share the institute the values that they have or that the institute has, will not be successful. So I believe it is very important to raise this awareness. We need to raise students and educate parents and educate those who have rented the facility for them and those who have sent them to education, and provide the technology that they need to, and even the technician who comes to repair the equipment. We need to do all of that. Yet, our problem is that we always wait for all of that to be handed over to us on a silver platter. These things have to be woven. I have a weaving workshop. I know at the end of the day how you obtain this textile. You start with a thread and then you reach the textile. Start with yourself. take the first step. We started with ourselves, and we know that today the Institute and the new graduates, we have around 100 or more than 100 new graduates. Now they are part of the Benin nation. All of them are role models. All of them are examples and role models of Islam. And even if we are successful with a single one of them, to instill the culture of peaceful coexistence and giving him a proper image of how Islam should look like, if we do that, they will understand what they should do and what should be achieved. So in this regard, we will be successful. I do not always talk about the numbers or the figures or the amount. This is Islam in Benin. I am a Benini Muslim, even if I'm an Arab scholar and I belong to the world and to the Muslim world. All of us belong to Adam, and Adam was created from dust. So I believe that going back to the origin of humanity, which is a shared origin, will erase all the differences among us. So I always recommend that we should focus on the common values that we have, the common ground that we have, and the shared values that all of us have. Of course, there are things that we can never do without, and we can never disregard. But at the end of the day, even when you have a number of sons, you cannot have all children living and being brought up in the same way and acting the same way, even if they are born to the same mother and to the same father. Thank you, and God bless you, and thank you for listening to me. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you, and I would like to thank you first and foremost, praise be to Almighty Allah. Thank Almighty Allah for giving us this life, and I always say, having one more day in this world to prove how we are grateful to Almighty Allah, this is a blessing in itself. I would like to thank all of you, and I hope that peace and peacefulness will return, because what we are facing in terms of challenges and problems in facing COVID-19 pandemic is a state of instability and insecurity for all countries. So I would like to seize this opportunity to supplicate Almighty Allah to protect us from all evils and all bad things, and to protect all of us and help us all and enable us to understand this danger and to work diligently in a more responsible manner to face these problems. Thank you very much, and God bless all of you. Thank you, and God bless you. Thank you very much, Dr. Wadad. Thank you very much, Dr. Wadad, for this wonderful and valuable lecture, which has taken us to highlight the values of Islam and Muslims in the Republic of Benin and the challenges they have been facing and Islam is facing in that region to the west of Africa, and the aspirations that she has in terms of adopting the proper approach and in order to be able to protect our sons and daughters from falling into the concepts of extremism and all those wrong values which are alien to Islam. This great lecture was based on her understanding of Islam and her pride of Islam and her sense of belonging to the Republic of Benin. But there is definitely, she projected an international concept in paying attention to the concepts of Islam and the cases and the issues of Islam. This is not strange to Dr. Wadad and to Muslims in Benin. She graduated from the Faculty of Da'wah, from which hundreds of prominent scholars and preachers and imams graduated. You are our role model, Dr. Wadad, and we're very proud of you. And we at the World Muslim Communities Council, we learn from you, and we learn from what you say, and we learn from your directives, and we supplicate Almighty Allah to bless this relationship and cooperation with you, and may Almighty Allah put an end to this pandemic, and we supplicate Almighty Allah to let peace and tranquility prevail the world, and this is a key objective in the Islamic Sharia. You have raised my generation. God bless you. May God bless you. God protect your health, and God protect your family, and God protect your children, and may Almighty Allah protect all Muslims everywhere. Thank you very much. I would like to thank all our colleagues at the media department. I would like to thank my brother, Mr. Muhammad Hassan al-Mazouki, the administrative official. Would like to thank him. He is the administrative officer at the World Muslim Communities Council. I would like to thank the interpreters and the technical team. I would like to thank the technical team who have conveyed this lecture. And this lecture, if it is written, you can send it to us. You can send us a copy of the lecture that you have given, so it can be part of the publications and one of the books published by the World Muslim Communities Council, and to introduce the prominent scholars and imams and preachers like you. Thank you very much. May Allah bless you. May Allah protect all of you, and peace be with all of you. Peace be with you.